My name is Christien Levien. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. Additionally, I'm the founder of Legal Swipe. So Legal Swipe is a mobile application that lets people know not only what their rights are, but also how they should respond depending on the legal situation. So for instance, during an interaction with a police officer, well, somebody's going to want to know what extent of legal jeopardy they may be in. So the app lets you know this, but it also lets you know what you should be saying to the officer themselves. So that way you could appear knowledgeable about the law, and hopefully through your response, if it's your aim to be left alone, you get left alone. I think the community feedback has been great. I've seen not only the social community, but also the legal community has had a really strong response to the application. And I think its ability as an innovative tool to address the systemic inequality that results from whether it be racial profiling or just community policing. I grew up in Brampton, and I'm proudly from Brampton. And what I saw was a lot of members of our community were facing social and economic obstacles. And a large reason for this is they didn't have the ability to navigate the legal system. A lot of people don't recognize the amount of power that comes with having an understanding of the law, or at least having somebody who could fight on your behalf. So for me, it was a natural step to become a lawyer because I felt it was able to not only empower me, but also enlighten me to the ways in which the system works. So I decided to do criminal law, essentially because our community, unfortunately, is overrepresented in the criminal justice system. So for me, making the application, well, there was a few things that happened. First, myself, I was the victim of a police assault when I was in university, and it was completely unwarranted. And as I was going through the system, I began to realize the difficulty that people face going through the legal process. It's oftentimes arduous, and very rarely do people find the types of remedies which they're looking for. So I knew I had to become a lawyer once I realized I was in a position of privilege and I had the ability to make systemic change if only I had my law degree. And for me, it was the only thing that made sense. It was the most sensible path. I applaud Black Lives Matter for the work that they've been doing. As a lawyer, I consider myself to be an advocate, but the way in which I advocate is through the courts. So I make my legal arguments, and hopefully I find justice. But Black Lives Matter has had an uncanny ability to use the media to connect with politicians and to turn people's attention to the plight of anti-Black racism here in the Americas. So I think the work that they're doing is great. I believe that everyone has a different role to play. So, hey, if you're a politician, you should be working through the bureaucracy. That's your job. If you're a lawyer, you're supposed to be working through the courts. And Black Lives Matter, they've been working through the streets. So I admire the work that they've done. I think mentorship is absolutely essential to finding professional success. I think of many of my colleagues in law, they perhaps grew up in a more privileged situation than I did, and they were able to rely on their family members or even leverage connections to get them into their respective position. For me, unfortunately, I didn't have that. I had a single mother, and she wasn't, well, we'll say we weren't high-income people, right? We didn't have the amount of resources that were available to other people. What that meant for me was I needed to go out and seek my own mentors. I needed to go out and find people, and I needed to make sure I marketed and presented myself in such a way that I'd appeal to those potential mentors. And I genuinely feel that without mentorship, you can't build. Nothing is created from scratch. There's nothing new under the sun. There's definitely people, if you have a vision, chances are there's someone out there who's already acted upon that vision, or at least started to build in that direction. So it's necessary to create connections. Diversity is necessary because when you have a diverse pool of employees or even talent on your team, you get a diverse pool of experiences. And for me, it makes for a better product. You end up with better customer service. You're able to better connect with your clientele. So I think it's a necessary component of any successful business that it's going to place diversity as a priority. My favorite book is The Lean Startup by Eric Rice. And the reason being, I think especially in law, but also coming from a family that wasn't well versed in business, I had the notion that hard work was equivalent to good work. And what that book helped me realize was I needed to designate my time to those things that mattered, that I had the ability to do. It made me really look into myself to see what skills I have and what I brought to the work that I do. And it just helped me work a lot more efficiently. So for anybody, whether they're doing a startup in tech, whether they're an employee in tech, or even if they're just doing business, I think The Lean Startup is hands down the best book I've ever read. Hey, if you want to be a strong entrepreneur, you're going to need validation, which you know if you read The Lean Startup, but you're going to have to make sure that there's people who co-sign you, who will say that whether it's a product or service that you're offering is a strong product or service. I also advise that you create a team or at least a solid network of individuals that you can rely on for mentorship. And the reason is, when you're creating a product, you're immediately involved with it, right? Every day you wake up and you go to bed and you're intimately involved. You're thinking about it. But the problem with that is that you need somebody on the outside to tell you when you're doing right and you're doing wrong. Because it's very easy to be so caught up with whatever you're creating or whatever you're doing that you can't objectively consider the decisions that you're making. So I say, have a solid team, preferably of influencers around you, so that you can make sure that that whatever you're creating, again, whether it's a product or service, is something that's built well. When I was in grade 12, I had this history teacher, and he saw something in me. A lot of my teachers, I'll be honest, they didn't. They're always shocked when they hear how well I've done so far. And what he said was, everyone says yes to the big question. And what does this mean? When people ask, hey, do you want the big house? Do you want the mansion? Of course, your answer is going to be yes. Do you want the Porsche? Yes. But it's the no's that matter. So, hey, look, are you going to chill out with whoever this weekend? No. Are you going to go to that party this weekend? No. So, and I think for a lot of people, especially people in our community, the issue you run into is because, you're young, you may be really talented at a lot of different things. But what's going to separate those who do well from those who don't is discipline. Your ability to sit down and focus